My name is John O'Brien. I am the Vice Chairman of CBRE, and I have introduced this. This is the fourth session now I've introduced of these Fireside Chats. We have had Ned Goodman and Michael Cooper. We had Fred Wax and Ed Sunshine, and we have had John Love interviewed by Blake Hutchison. So it is my great pleasure this year to introduce to you someone that is incredibly well known in our industry, Peter Sharpe, formerly of Cadillac Fairview and now of Everywhere.
Thank you.
Before I get going, I would like to thank our sponsors, without whom none of this ever happens. So Cadillac Fairview, big surprise, is actually the lead sponsor. The event sponsors are CBRE and TD. And when Peter and I talk about the deal where Peter took over the rest of the complex that he didn't own at TD Center, Eaton Center, and Pacific Center, you'll know why TD is a sponsor. We are also recording this for posterity, so be careful what you say because it will live on and on and on and on. The format is very informal, so we're going to go roughly an hour. Then we're going to allow about 15 minutes for questions. The format is a direct rip-off, just so you know, and we acknowledge it, of the Inside the Actors Studio format, so right down to the chairs. I don't have the list of cards, but I've really got the notes, but it is meant to be more informal. It is not meant to be a recantation of somebody's CV, but it's more a recantation of somebody's business life. So now, Katie, are you there? Way to go. Can you go to that really horrible blank screen? Perfect. So Peter, your name is, by the way, it was Inside the Mind of Peter Sharpe, Sharpe Thoughts. Your name opens up a plethora of possibilities. But what we actually landed on in the end was, Peter Sharpe, this is your life.
Oh, jeez.
So, and every life has a beginning, Peter. I wouldn't mind just talking about your sort of early days, where you grew up and all of that type of stuff, because I'm sort of harkening back to the Jesuits whom I was educated by, have this wonderful saying, which sounds a bit sexist now, but if you ignore the sexism in it, which says, if you show me a boy before he's 7, I'll show you the man. So the early years are often quite indicative of where you're going, and your early years were in Winnipeg, I understand. Your wife sent me these pictures. So.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, the one when you're screaming, I've seen that expression when I've given you lease offers before, so I know how that one works. But yeah, for some historical, accidental reason, you started in Winnipeg?
Attention.
Yep.
May I have your attention, please? This is building security. A fire alarm has been activated on the 25th floor. We are investigating the alarm. Further information will be provided. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. I was born in Winnipeg. I lived there for all of about 3 weeks, so I then moved to Toronto. So I consider myself certainly raised in Toronto.
And
Attention, please. This is building security. A fire alarm has been activated on the 25th floor. We are investigating the alarm. Further information will be provided. Thank you.
you were in operations.
This is the operations guys getting back at me, I know. All those years.
Lawrence Park, benign upbringing. It was fun. You had angst as a teenager. Like, how did it go?
Yeah, no, all pretty normal. My dad was in sales, and Mom was a homemaker, and my sister and I grew up, went to North Toronto Collegiate, Blythewood Public School, and nothing.
Camp?
I was very active at Kilcoo Camp through a number of years, and then was on the staff at Kilcoo Camp, and then mainly on the waterfront. And my last year there, which was just before I went to university, was as the waterfront director. So camp did play a big role in my life back then, and I think it's interesting when you kind of develop sort of leadership by osmosis when you're as a camp counselor or a waterfront director or even a swimming instructor. You have to learn, and nobody really teaches you, but you learn how you manage people and motivate people and get people to do things they don't want to do, and So it was, I look back at that as a key time in my early development, certainly, yeah.
And anybody stand out for like role models that you've sort of a touchstone going backwards?
Well, John Latimer, who ran Kilkoo Camp, owned Kilkoo Camp at the time, became a dear friend, and he was certainly someone who had a great influence on me, and my dad, I guess, would be the other one that certainly, he taught me a lot about patience and calm and respect for people and politeness. He was a real gentleman, so he'd have been another big influence over the years. Yeah.
Next stage.
Oh,
so Wilfrid Laurier, which wasn't Wilfrid Laurier, right?
No, that was Waterloo Lutheran University in those days. And I started there in 66, graduated in 70, took an honors program in economics and business administration, it was called at the time. So.
And friends from that period have lasted? Or?
Yes, there was a very close-knit group there that we organized a winter carnival back in those days, and it was completely run by students of the business school primarily, and with a very minimal cash flow allowance from the university, we put on, ultimately turned into a week-long event, and we'd fly. In those days, every university had a queen, and so we'd fly all these queens in, and we got Air Canada to fly them all in, and we put them up for a week, and we had concerts, we had Blood, Sweat, and Tears, we had Diana Ross Supremes, we had big shows, we sold TV rights to the actual show, the show itself, and it was quite an incredible, for a bunch of kids to be able to put this together. Bill Ballard, who went on to was with the group, who went on to have Concert Productions International. The guy Pete Larson, and Pat Whitley developed Dufferin Gate and made movie. He's retired recently, but he made a lot of movies over the years for television movies as opposed to big screen. So it was quite an interesting group, and in fact that group to this day, since about mid-70s, we get together every year for Christmas dinner, and we still get, there's probably a potential of 22, 23 people, and I would say there's never fewer than about 18 there, so people really don't want to miss it, and in many cases, it's the only time we see each other every year. But out of that whole experience, it became a pretty close group.
And a good counterpoint for real estate, in that they weren't mainly real estate people? Right?
No, not at all. And no, in fact, nobody in that group had a career in real estate.
So moving on. So there's a picture of Nancy Green up there, which I will come to in a second.
Okay.
But, what we did notice, I couldn't get the logos. It shows you how long ago those companies
were
around.
Yeah, that's right.
But I couldn't
actually
get the logos.
None of them exist anymore?
Yeah, because they're all out of business.
Yeah.
So,
got a hell of a track record.
Yeah. And you have recently joined Allied's board. Which is, but the Nancy Green thing intrigued me with...
Yeah, I worked through university and shortly thereafter with Royal Bank, which I loved, and but at $7,500 a year, I was looking for advancement, and so I joined a small sports promotion public relations firm. There were 3 partners and an admin assistant and me, and but one of their clients was that we managed Nancy Green's. We did her Mars Bars commercials and all those things. We managed Red Berenson, a tennis player named Peter Burwash at the time, and we organized the World Curling Championship, which at that time was sponsored by Air Canada.
You were how old at this point?
I would have been 22, 3, I guess, yeah. And that was great because I was the young guy with no ties, and so we organized one in Megève in France. So I was over there for 6 months and fly back and forth on a first-class Air Canada pass because they were the sponsor, and lived in the host hotel for the 6 months. And next year I did the same thing in Garmisch. So that was a lot of fun for a young guy to do that. So.
Boy, where's Mackenzie? Man, did you get it wrong?
So, and then we, so then from there, I really, it was pretty clear to me that within that little company, I didn't have much of a future. So but I loved the business and I wanted to stay in it. And so at that time, other than the odd little organization like that, the whole public relations promotion business was pretty much handled by the ad agencies. So I started talking to them, figuring that was going to be a bigger field of opportunity, and they offered me $7,500 again. So I decided that wasn't in my future. So
how'd you end up in real estate?
Well, a fellow that I went to university with named Bob Ferguson, who some in the room will remember. He was with Bramley back when, and has been in the States now for a number of years. But he was working at Marathon, and we'd known each other in university. And so we were getting together one evening for a beer at the Victoria Hotel, which is still there, unlike the companies. So he was, so I was telling him my plight that I really wanted to get with a larger firm, but nobody did it. And he said, "Well, we're hiring. We're looking for a property representative." And I said, "Oh, okay. What do they do?" "Well, they run the buildings. They lease it, they market it, they manage the contracts. They're basically responsible for the building." And I said, "Well, how much does that pay?" He said, $12,000. I said, "I can do that." That's exactly it. It all started at the Victoria Hotel over a beer. There you go.
And if there's a fire, it may just end there.
Attention, please. This is building management. The alarm condition has been investigated, and all has been found to be in order. I repeat, all has been found in order. Thank you.
A good omen.
He's going to say it again.
You're right. So how long at Marathon?
I was there for about 4.5 years at Marathon.
And office properties?
I started out managing 69 Yonge Street. That was the building that I was hired to manage. And in those days at Marathon, it was a pretty new company, but they were growing, and so people were moving on very rapidly. So I had a meteoric rise, just backfilling for the guy I worked for. So I ended up basically running their Ontario portfolio of properties, which wasn't. We had the Keel Centre, which was at a two-level industrial project there. We had a shopping centre in Cambridge, a couple of office buildings. It was small in Toronto. Now they had Montreal, and we were building in Montreal, building in Vancouver. But they had lots of land in downtown because it was basically formed out of the CP Rail. Real estate group was spun off and moved into a real estate company.
So in your quest for ever more money, where did you go next?
After Marathon, I went to York Hanover, and with them I was involved in a development down called Maple Leaf Square, which is down in Niagara Falls. So they had 3 hotels, the Brock, the Foxhead, and the old Motor Inn, which is gone now. And a fellow that ran that was a chap named Carson von Wiersbe, who had a vision of casinos and everything. So we built this entertainment complex between the hotels, put in this huge Ferris wheel, not quite as big as the Eye, but the next largest one in the world, I think. And I learned a lot down there. Our banking was dependent on us getting the retail stores leased, and that was a struggle. And so I think in a span of about 6 months, we started 20 different retail companies and leased them all space and stocked them all and managed them all just so we could pull down our financing. So it was...
Due diligence wasn't heavy in those days.
Due diligence wasn't very heavy in those days, no. So...